Hi, thanks for being here. I wanted to share an experience that I had. Back in 2012, my youngest son he went on after he graduated from high school, he went on a Rotary Youth Exchange to Cinco Saltos, Argentina, which is about, I don't know for sure. It was probably about 1,000 miles southwest of Buenos Aires. And it's a small town. I don't know. We thought maybe 25,000. That was been several years ago, so it could be bigger. But it's a smaller community of Argentinians. And nobody spoke English. It wasn't like where you go travel to major cities and most of the people that live there speak enough English to do whatever. Well, these people didn't. He lived with three different host families while he was there. We stayed with so when he came home he was there for 9 months. He left on September 1st, 2012, and came home in June of 2013. So he was there for 10 months and became totally fluent in Spanish. He thought he knew Spanish when he left. He said, "Oh," I said, "Are you studying your Spanish?" "Oh, yeah, yeah, I got it." He got off the plane, went to customs. He says, "Oh shit, I don't know Spanish." so, so that was a rude awakening. So after about 3 or 4 months, he said he started dreaming in Spanish. So that's when you know you've assimilated. You know how to, you're fully fluent. And so when he got home in June of 2013, he immediately got a job and he said he wanted to go back and graduate with his class that he had gone to school with down there because their school year, they end in December. And so, or I mean, yeah, that's their summer because it's the southern hemisphere. Excuse me. So he asked me if I wanted to go with him, and I said, okay. So I went. So he and I went down December 1st, 2013. I went down there for 2 weeks, which was just an amazing experience. It was really a unique experience because I was thrown into that same culture with people who didn't speak English, and the only people that were even sort of could speak a little were the two kids who were part of the host family that he'd been living with. And they were trying to kind of learn English with me, which was not helpful. And so there would be times when Jonah, my son's name is Jonah, when I'd say, Jonah, what are they talking about? What are we doing? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, yes, it does. It does matter. I felt like a little kid, totally dependent on my son. There was one point where we went to the graduation ceremony, which was incredible. There were probably 1,000 people in this big hall, and the music was boom, 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 boom. They were dancing, and all the parents were dancing with the kids. It was just amazing. But it was such a weird feeling. At one point, we're sitting there having dinner, and I thought, I am in this room with 1,000 people, and I've never felt so alone because I couldn't communicate really with anyone except for Jonah, who was off doing his thing, and you smile a lot and nod and think, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. After a while, though, what was cool is the night before I was there for 2 weeks, the night before I was supposed to fly home, because he was staying an extra week, I was laying there and I was recalling things in Spanish. I mean, it wasn't like knew what I was thinking about, but I started remembering things in Spanish and what they were talking about. I can't even explain it. And so I see, oh, this is how it works. Um, so on the way home, I had to we had to take a domestic flight to the international airport in Buenos Aires. So they all took me to the airport, and I had Jonah write me a little note. And I said, "What if I can't? I have to get a bus. I had to get a pass from wherever we flew in. We flew into a smaller airport from the one in Saltos. Um, then I had to get a pass to a bus ride to take me to the big international airport, Aziza or whatever it's called, in Buenos Aires, which is like a 45-minute drive. And so I was really afraid that I wouldn't be able. What if I get on the wrong bus, and end up in Ecuador or something? So he wrote me a little note what to say when I went to get the bus pass, and Fortunately, the gal at the window spoke enough English that she knew what I wanted. So I got my bus pass, and my bag was the first one off the plane, which was, thank God. And then it was like, I had to walk outside with all these buses and hopefully get on the right bus. It was a little scary because I didn't speak any English. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't speak their language. But so then I was sitting. I had to sit in the airport for 10 hours before my flight took off. And I'm in this airport and all these people are speaking Spanish all around me. It was crazy. Until I got up to the gate. Later, eventually I was able to get to the gate that I'm leaving out of, and I'm starting to be around Americans again. And I'm telling you, it was disgusting. The entitlement of some of these people, the way they were talking was just like, it made me sick because I had just spent 2 weeks with some of the nicest people I have ever met in my life. So kind and generous and giving. And the kids were so respectful and nice. And I remember Jonah saying he didn't want to go home. He didn't want to come home because he just felt he really wanted to find a way to stay there. That's how much different he was. He said that everybody was so welcoming and they treated him kindly. They didn't, I mean, in school, the other kids weren't weren't like the American kids are. They weren't entitled and mean to each other. And all the thing I noticed was we went to a barbecue with one of the families, and the grandparents were there, and the kids, these teenagers were, oh grandma, can I get you anything? They were so polite and so kind. And here it's like, oh God, I got to go to grandma's house. We're so cynical, and they're so loving and embrace their extended family, which we could learn from. Um, anyway, it was just a wonderful experience. And the other thing that I noticed was the decadence that we live with. We have so much. We have to have these big grand houses to hold all our crap. Their house, the house that we stayed at, was just a small home. Um, in the, I don't know. I don't know if they have any zoning or anything. It was just like a kind of a neighborhood, but there's a little store just around the corner. It was so different. Although, if you're a pedestrian in Argentina, you take your life in your hands when you cross the street because they're on these little residential streets that are like, like outside your house or like in a little neighborhood, and they're driving like 45 miles an hour on these streets. You are not the priority. You have to really watch where you're going. So there is that. And we did go on a road trip to Neuquén, I don't know how you say it, which is about, I don't know, an hour away. And I was just sitting in the back seat praying, just keeping my eyes closed because they were driving so fast. And it was just like a little 2-lane highway. It wasn't like a nice freeway with big shoulders. It was just like a 2-lane highway, or well, 4-lane. I guess they were on 2 lanes. excuse me. 2 lanes on each side. And but there were these mangled cars on the side of the road, over where, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be one of those. So anyway, there is that. But when we back to their house, when you go in, it's just this, everything's concrete kind of, or stucco. I don't know what it is. It's not wood. The siding is not wood, and inside of the house is not wood. It's not like drywall, sheetrock, or whatever. It's just walls, made out of cement or something, and nothing, no grandiose anything. It was just a living room. You walked into the living room, and the dining room table was like a big door on some on some sawhorses, I think, and that was right there. You walk in, and the living room's over here, and the door's right there, and then the kitchen is right over here. And the kitchen was like, how do they do anything in this kitchen? It had a big gas stove, which was cool, big, huge one. And then right next to it was this counter that was maybe 10 feet wide, not huge, but in the middle of it was a sink, but it came up to like here. I'm thinking, how do you do anything with that? Everything's up here. And then there was a little portable kind of a shelf thing, and on the other wall was their their washer and dryer, one of those single unit things, and some in the refrigerator. That might have been the washer and dryer might have been around a corner into this little nook, but the refrigerator was there, and the milk is in bags, and just weird stuff. And they don't eat peanut butter. They didn't know what peanut butter was. We had to bring peanut butter. Anyway, those are just silly things. But the house was small, and you just went upstairs. They did have a bidet. I had never used a bidet, and I don't know why we don't have them in America. I'm telling you, they're and it wasn't cold water. It had warm water. Hello. Anyway, that's an aside. Uh, but there were like 2 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom and a big bedroom downstairs. And I think there might have been a bathroom downstairs. I don't remember. But it was very simple, hardly anything in it, not a lot of like my freaking mess of a house. I have this little cracker box that I'm living in that is full of stuff. They didn't have a bunch of stuff. And I thought, wow, we could learn something from that. And then on Sundays, pretty much it's kind of like going to Mayberry. If you've ever watched Andy Griffith, if you haven't, watch Andy Griffith sometime if you can find it. Mayberry is like this, it's kind of like living in the 50s. Um, on Sundays, everything's closed. There's maybe a gas station open here and there, and maybe a little store. Because everybody goes out to the lake. We went out to the lake and had like they had a house out there, I guess. Yeah, we stayed at their little house, but everybody's out at the lake. They're all playing, and it's just so laid back. And I mean, granted, this was 13 years ago, but still, the culture is just so different. I do have to say that when I was riding the bus into Buenos Aires, we were driving through Buenos Aires to the big airport, the international airport. The poverty is pretty incredible, but it was weird. I've never been to New York City. I've been to San Francisco and um, Seattle. I've been to some big cities, but nothing like Buenos Aires. When we flew in, I was just like, oh my God, this just goes on forever. So it's like the New York of South America, I think, one of them. Um, but the poverty was heartbreaking because we were at a stoplight in the downtown area, just going through town, whatever, not town, going through the city. And there were little kids. There was like a little berm of grass, kind of there was a freeway going over that way. And then there was this little area. Look, it wasn't a park, but it kind of could have been thought of that way. And there was a mom and some kids sitting over there, and the little kids were going, every time somebody stopped, the little kids would run over and beg from the traffic that stopped at the stoplight. And I just thought, these little kids are running up to this traffic. It was really heartbreaking. So, it's everywhere. It's here too, of course. But um, the whole experience was wonderful. I really think it's important that we all, as Americans, I don't know where you're listening from, if anybody's even listening, um, but we Americans, we are decadent. We take for granted a lot, and we have way too much crap. We have so much crap that fill our lives, and those people were so I don't know. Their humanity was much more obvious, and I think it's really important that everybody visit another country, go to some other culture. It's really eye-opening to see how much we take for granted and how brainwashed we are. I think we've been brainwashed. We've been hornswoggled into thinking we're the greatest thing there is. We have a lot of flaws. So anyway, that's just my story, and I just thought I would share that. And I encourage you, if you have an opportunity to visit another country. I mean, I've been to the border towns of Mexico, that was an experience too. And I've been to Canada, but this was like the biggest adventure. It was a 10-hour flight. We had to fly to, I think we flew out of Dallas, either Dallas or Atlanta, I can't remember. Um, and then it was a 10-hour flight over the Amazon. I thought, God, if we crash here, I hope I die because I don't want to get eaten by a snake or something. But it was quite the adventure. I highly recommend traveling somewhere outside of this country. Or if you're in another country, outside of your country, go somewhere else. It's really eye-opening. Anyway, that's just my story of the day, and hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.